Radio Hour. The next set. From the clown of the orchestra, that would be me. The other day, I was giving a composition lesson to one of my brilliant adult students. The last few sessions, we've been talking about orchestration, specifically in relation to Rimsky-Korsakov's magnificent text. My student said he was still confused about the range of some string instruments, particularly the viola. I said, that depends. He interrupted, saying, you mean it depends on the skill of the violist? I said, no. The range of the viola depends on how hard you kick it. It's generally about 20 feet. He is a person with tremendous self-motivation. And he told me that he had been reading about intervals. He went on to say that I understand a whole step is made of two half steps, half step being the same as a minor second. So I, meaning he, the student, says, I assume a whole step is made of two minor seconds. I said, technically, that's not correct. A whole step is made of an augmented prime plus a minor second. The augmented prime is 1 comma. And he said, no, this is way too complicated. Can you give me a simple definition of what a minor second is? I said, that's easy. That's a minor second is simply defined as when you have two piccolos trying to play in unison. He had been studying a Mahler score. In one place, there were 4 piccolos playing in unison. How in God's name, he asked, can you get 4 piccolos to play in tune while playing a unison passage? And I said, that's easy. All the conductor has to do is fire 3 of them. Speaking of getting musicians off the stage, the most famous example is Haydn's Farewell Symphony. Prince Esterházy had been underpaying musicians in his orchestra. I guess some things never change. So Haydn, really caring about his players, decided to kind of needle his employer because he knew that Esterházy had a sense of humor and he was a very cultured man, a wonderful musician himself. So he wrote his Farewell Symphony, in which each player leaves the stage individually. Before my student, who was relatively new to studying classical music, had turned to composition, he had been a very successful electric guitar player. He made tons of money playing weddings and bar mitzvahs. And he loved his instrument and he loved to wail on it. He always turned his volume up to 11. He was playing one wedding and the bride had very sensitive ears. She comes up to him and she's haranguing him about playing softer and he just won't. So she puts a sheet of music on his stand and he suddenly stops playing. She said, as long as I'm up here talking to you, what do you call a person who hangs around with musicians? He said, that's easy. A person who hangs around with musicians is a drummer. So in the orchestra, as I guess in life in general, there is a hierarchy. It always drove me crazy. Still does to some extent. In the orchestra, at the apex of this hierarchy is the conductor, although if you ask the concertmaster is at the height of the apex. So I was wondering, are there any violin jokes? None came to mind, so I did a little research. And this is the first thing that I came across. What do you get when you cross a violin with a pig? You get hamstrings. I play chamber music with a bunch of guys. Some of them are lawyers. Don't judge me. One of my buddies asked me, what do a violin and a lawsuit have in common, especially when you play, Ken? I said, I have no idea. He said, everyone is relieved when the case is closed. Which reminds me, at the end of a rehearsal of one of my high school orchestras, the principal violist comes up to me and he asks, what do all great violinists have in common? Oh, what they have in common is that they're all dead. He was a clever fellow. He laughed. He has a good sense of humor. And he actually told me something I'd never known before. He said violas are not actually bigger than violins. It's just that violinists' heads are just so big that it makes their instruments look smaller. He saw that I was amused, so he went on to ask, how many violinists does it take to change a light bulb? I said, I don't know. He said, 10 or more. I said, really? He said, yeah, one to replace the bulb, and the 9 of the rest, or however many there are, to tell you in no uncertain terms how they could have done it better. And he saw that I was chuckling, and he liked to make people laugh. So he went on and asked me, why are viola jokes so short? They're so short because we want violinists to be able to understand them. So after many years, I picked up the violin again, and then I put it down. And then I picked it up again. I figured that if I took some lessons, it would help me teach my kids. And in fact, my teachers did teach me some stuff that I was able to pass on. So I was thinking of how to further motivate me to practice. And the first thing that occurred to me was to audition for a chamber orchestra, if I could find one at a low enough level. So I did find one. And at my audition, I was told that my playing was like lightning. I was thrilled. However, before I could fully enjoy this compliment, the panelist added, your playing is like lightning because every time you play a note, your fingers never strike the same place twice. I wasn't too offended because he was a poor conductor. How do I know he was a poor conductor? Because he was unaffected when lightning struck him. I had some interesting experiences with brass players, and I went to my colleague, who was a brass player, and I asked him, among many other things about brass playing, how many second trumpet players does it take to change a light bulb? He said, none. They can't get up that high. And then I asked him, what separates a first trumpet player from a hungry, angry, vicious ape? He said, what separates a first trumpet player from a vicious, hungry, angry ape is the second trumpet player. Back to the violin. There was a huge variety in the skill level of my students, especially among the string players, many of whom were new to their instrument, having changed to violin or viola or cello or bass from guitar or piano. My concertmasters, however, were always very, very good. I was fortunate about that. This particular concertmaster I'm about to talk about now has a good career playing in a European orchestra while getting his master's degree. He also plays chamber music and concertos once in a while, and he's doing very well. I'm very proud of this young fellow. So he told me after one rehearsal that he had gone to a famous violin teacher to take a couple of consultations. And he asked the guy, how much do you charge? The famous violin teacher says, I charge $100 for 3 questions. And my student said, wow, that is really expensive. The famous violin teacher replied, and what, pray tell, is your 3rd question? My concertmaster, another year, told me that she had been a violinist for many, many years, since she had been practically a toddler, and that recently she had decided to learn piano. I said, that's a great idea. Most musicians, to one extent or another, play piano. Some even play well enough to accompany themselves, which is a great goal. She said, however, I've had to give up the piano. I asked why. She said, I have trouble getting the piano under my chin. She went on to say that she should take practicing violin more seriously. I said, what do you mean? You play so well? She said, yeah, I did a lot of grunt work when I was young, but lately I've just been fiddling around. The kid next to her did not enjoy these jokes too much. and she took a hard instrument and hit me. Now, fortunately for me, I've got very strong shoulder muscles, so when she hit me in the shoulder, I didn't really feel much discomfort. The hard instrument, however, broke into a million pieces. I was surprised that she wasn't upset when this hard instrument broke until her friend said, she's not going to worry about it. She's got a closet full of spare violins. I was talking to a cellist friend of mine the other day who wanted to make a few extra bucks besides his teaching and playing as a ringer in some local community orchestras. So he decided he was going to give group cello lessons to the thousands and thousands of people in his neighborhood who were dying to play cello. I said, this is great. Great idea. How are you going to market it? He said, I think I'm going to market it by making it a very easy class to join or a very easy class to leave. You can drop in, you can drop out. I'm going to supply the cellos, I'm going to supply the rosin, I'm going to supply the bows, I'm going to supply the end pins. I said, that's great. I asked him, do you have a tagline? He said, yeah, this cello class is going to be called Cello Classes with No Strings Attached. He saw that I liked the joke, so he went on to tell me that as a student himself, he'd gotten suspended. I said, really? He said, yeah, I was accused of using excessive violence. He saw how much I enjoyed that one, so he told me one more joke. He said he loves going to concerts, especially hearing wonderful string trios. He said, however, his favorite string trio had recently all died. I said, that's terrible. I'm so sorry to hear this. He said, no. It's a joke. Don't worry about it. So he went on to say that when they got to heaven, St. Peter asked them individually, what did you do with your life? The cellist says, I taught people about the great beauty of music. St. Peter says, that's wonderful. You may enter heaven. He turns to the violist and he says, sir, what did you do with your life? Great St. Peter, I also taught people about the beauty of music. Not only that, I taught them how to take these techniques, this understanding of art, and how to apply it to all areas of their life. St. Peter says, this is really wonderful. Welcome to heaven. He turns to the violinist. The violinist snaps at him, says, St. Peter, I want to see your supervisor. I want to see someone higher up. St. Peter, of course, is unflappable. Nothing can bother him. He has seen everything. He has heard everything. So he says, okay. And he takes the violinist to God's throne room, where God is sitting on this huge throne. And God says, and sir, what did you do with your life? And the violinist says, I was a great violinist. I was concertmaster of every single orchestra I ever played in. I never played second. I never even played assistant concertmaster. I played concertos from the time I was 5 years old. And sir, you seem to be sitting in my seat.